Welcome to the Damascus Road podcast. On the road to Damascus, Paul had a radical encounter with Jesus and his life was changed forever. That is what we hope and pray for here. Now, on to this week's episode.
Now, one of the things that I did on maternity leave was read a lot of books. I love to read, but I have a complicated relationship with reading. I don't like feeling stressed out, and one of the things that stresses me out is conflict. Now, if you have ever read a book, one of the key things that keeps the plot moving is conflict. Thus, my dilemma. I want to read, but the reading stresses me out. So, my very clever solution to this dilemma is to become a rereader. I reread books like crazy. Like, I'll finish a series and let's start that over again because it was so good and I already know what's going to happen. And when you already know what's going to happen, it's way less stressful. I know that everything is going to work out in the end. All of my characters will survive. They'll fall in love. Nothing bad will ever happen to them again. But I break this rule of rereading for my book club. So in the month of October, because October is like Halloween and spooky, we decided to read The Terror by Dan Simmons. And it is a horror retelling of the Lost Franklin expedition that was trying to find the Northwest Passage over Canada. The ships got iced in and they were never found. So here's what the book jacket says to tickle your fancy. Endlessly cold with diminishing rations, 126 men fight to survive with poisonous food, a dwindling supply of coal, and ships buckling in the grip of crushing ice. But their real enemy is far more terrifying. There is something out there in the frigid darkness, an unseen predator stalking their ship, a monstrous terror constantly clawing to get in. Very spooky. And I'm not going to lie, it was very stressful. I got very attached to these poor characters who were lost out in the cold, and it was really hard to wait in suspense for each of them to progressively die from frostbite, then scurvy, then botulism, then decapitation, and of course disembowelment from the monster because he's always lurking. And I was all the while hoping some miracle, something would come and save them. And this is a long book. How long is the abridged version, Peyton? Okay, 9 hours for the abridged version. It was 28 for the unabridged version. So a long book. Because one of my other strategies to make it through stressful books is I just read it all in one go, like get the stress over as fast as possible. And I couldn't do that with this book. It was too long and it was torturing me. I would fall asleep reading it. And then I would dream about it. And then I would think about it on the drive to drop my kids off at school. And then I would live with this little knot of anxiety in the pit of my stomach until I could read it again. And then the next awful thing would happen to them. And then I would talk to my husband, Ryan, about it. And then I would talk to my friends about it. And then I would talk to you guys about it. And then I would fall asleep reading it. And the whole cycle just started over again. It was horrible. It was so stressful. The stress of this book filled all of my waking and sleeping hours, mentally replaying, worrying about it, ruminating on it, until I finally finished it and the monster ate everyone. Just kidding. That's not how it ends. I won't spoil it for you because I know you guys are dying to read it now. But have you guys ever had something like that where something just dominated your thoughts and your emotions and you kept replaying it over and over, thinking about it, dreaming about it, feeling this anxious knot of stress about it? You try to let it go, you try to relax, but it just keeps sneaking up on you, filling all of your subconscious mental space. Now, a scary book or a stressful show will do that to me. But one of the surprising things that takes up a lot of mental real estate for me is hurt. When I feel hurt by somebody, something they did or said, or maybe they even didn't do, I find myself thinking about it a lot. I'll replay the conversation over and over in my head. I will examine the comment that they made from every different angle. I'll have imaginary conversations with myself. Does anyone do this? Okay, thank you. I'm not the only one. But I have all these clever comebacks and these things that I could say to hurt them back and show how petty they are and how small they are. And I always win in these conversations. And I wonder to myself, how could they have possibly done that to me? Who would do something like that? And then I will answer myself, because it is in my head, Well, it's probably because they're so emotionally immature, or it's because they don't really care about me or our friendship, or because they're selfish or a jerk. And if I wake up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep, or I want to complain to my husband Ryan about something, it is probably one of these rehearsed hurts that I'm still chewing over and I can't get out of my head. I don't know if this happens to you too when people hurt you, like the constant replaying it, the rumination, but that's what my brain does. And I'm not going to lie, it kind of sucks. It is not fun to have my mental space consumed by things that people have said or done to hurt me, because no matter how many imaginary conversations I have in my head, it doesn't fix it. So how do I get my brain to turn off about it? Well, with the Scary Monster book, I just finish the book and I move on. It's over. But in real life, I can't just finish my relationships with people who have done hurtful things to me and just move on. I guess I could do that, but then I would have no friends or no people in my life, because as much as I've tried to find perfect people who won't hurt me, I haven't found them yet. My mother has hurt me. My father has hurt me. My sister has hurt me. My friend has hurt me. My brother in Christ has hurt me. My son has hurt me. My husband has hurt me. People hurt. We live in a broken world of hurt people who hurt people. And we need a way to get out of this rut where relationships sour and splinter and fall apart, where our dreams and mental space get consumed with the wrongs done to us, where we're stuck in rumination over hurts that we can't change, and futures that feel bleak and sticky and lonely. Can we free our hearts and minds from this hurt that ruins us? And luckily, the answer is yes. If you're feeling, God, this is really depressing, what am I here for this morning? Don't worry. Jesus has hope for us. And this is what we're going to be unpacking over this next year as we explore this deep and mysterious practice of forgiveness. There's a reason that we are not just doing one series on forgiveness. If you didn't know, this is the first of 3 series on forgiveness. But it's because forgiveness is not easy. It is a dense and difficult topic that has huge ramifications on our lives. And Jesus understands human nature pretty well, considering he made us and he lived the human life. And Jesus argues that we cannot be transformed into his image, that we cannot be successful Christ followers without deeply understanding and embodying forgiveness. Because forgiveness transforms and liberates everything. But we're not going to get ahead of ourselves. Today, we are not going to talk about forgiveness. We're going to talk about unforgiveness. So, sorry. But this is the natural outcome of our broken and fallen world, is unforgiveness. And we need to understand where we're starting with unforgiveness. We need to unpack it, how it happens, how we get stuck in it, so that we can recognize it and start to move beyond it. So buckle up and get ready, because it's going to get messy and a little bit ugly. Okay, we're going to go way back to the beginning. If you've got your Bible, go ahead and open up to Genesis chapter 4. Genesis is the very first book of the Bible. We are only 4 chapters in, so you'd think, things can't be that bad at this point yet. But you're wrong. They're bad already. Chapter 4. Little recap. Chapter 3. There is a snake. It tells some lies. People believe those lies, and then they make choices based on the lies, and life gets messed up. The once perfect relationship that existed between God and humans and man and woman is broken. It is beginning the long legacy of hurt that exists in our world. And born into this world of broken relationships are 2 brothers, and their names are Cain and Abel. So let's find out a little bit about them, starting in Genesis chapter 4, verse 2. Now, Abel kept flocks, and Cain worked the soil. So Abel's a shepherd, and Cain is a farmer. They live outside of Eden, and relationships between each other and God are no longer innocent and easy. But both brothers seek to make steps in their relationship with God. So we find in verse 3, in the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. This seems like a really great thing to do. Both Cain and Abel are showing appreciation for and trust in God, bringing him gifts, recognizing that everything that they have ultimately is a gift from God that belongs to him. But there is a snag. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering, He did not look with favor. So here's the beginning of every story of both forgiveness and unforgiveness. There is a hurt. And how that hurt gets dealt with and worked through is what makes the difference between forgiveness and unforgiveness. Because there will always be hurts this side of redemption. We can't avoid that. We are broken people who hurt others, and broken people hurt us. It is impossible to be in relationship with God and others and not experience this bumping up of two separate wills and desires and actions. And when we bump, it hurts. Now, in the upcoming weeks, we will dive into the process of forgiveness and the journey that is. But unforgiveness is also a process. We don't immediately jump into unforgiveness when a hurt happens to us. There are these steps that we follow to find ourselves in that place of bitterness that's really ugly and gross for our souls. And this is called the descent of unforgiveness, the name that I gave it. So let's see how Cain and Abel's story already starts the descent of unforgiveness. First, there is a transgression. There is a hurt. Maybe for you, it's similar to the hurt that Cain experiences. What he does is overlooked and unappreciated. He tries and he fails. He is rejected, and that is really painful. And there are lots of different hurts in this world, ranging in size from cataclysmic things like rape and abuse and a parent leaving you, to the paper cut variety, like getting cut off in traffic. But all of these things are hurt. Now, I want to share with you some of my hurts, varying in levels of degree, to help you start to recognize what are some of the hurts that I might be carrying in my life. All right, first one, my daughter saying, "Yuck, that looks disgusting," when I put food on the table at night. I've been cooking for an hour. That really hurts my feelings. It is not disgusting. It's good. My professor in grad school grading me lower for a mistake that she made but wouldn't own up to. My friend flaking out on plans at the last minute when I've been scheduling with them for weeks, trying to get together, and they just don't show up. My other friend making really poor decisions and then expecting me to pretend to be really happy for her, to rubber stamp the hurtful choices that she's making in her life. My dad not taking an interest in my life, and not treating me like a daughter. Someone I cared for and invested in for years, telling lies about me and my husband and my friends. Maybe some of these resonate with you. Maybe Cain's hurt resonates with you, or maybe for you it's something different. But the descent to unforgiveness always starts with a hurt. So let's see what Cain does with his hurt. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. So hurt creates feels. We get all sorts of emotions raging through our bodies when we experience a hurt. We feel betrayed, angry, afraid, offended, unloved, overlooked, shamed, unworthy, unjustly attacked, anxious, unappreciated, humiliated, sad. When God does not look with favor on his offering, Cain feels angry and downcast. And I get it. I would probably feel similarly if I was Cain. So far we have step 1, a transgression, a hurt. And then step 3, we have a sensation. We have some sort of emotion. But there is this crucial step missing between the hurt and then the feelings that we have about it. And that is step 2, a perception. This is where the initial story gets told about what has happened to me. God enters the conversation here, and he asks Cain to explore his perception of what has just happened. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast?" God is pointing out that a story has been told that links the transgression to Cain's sensation, his anger. The why is the story that Cain is telling himself. And this step is crucial because this is a step that a lot of us miss in our descent to unforgiveness. Like Cain, we jump straight from the hurt to the anger. And we have no realization that we are just jumping over this crucial step that is taking place in between. Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? What story have you been telling yourself about what has happened that is leading to these emotions you're feeling? So let's go back to my daughter saying yuck when I put dinner on the table. The feeling I feel is often rage. It is enraging to slave over the stove for an hour with a baby and a toddler, like pulling at my ankles, trying to make something healthy and delicious. And she does not care. Now, the reason that I often feel rage is because the story I'm telling myself is about me, with me at the center. I slaved so hard. I put in so much effort. I am being such a good mom by making you this healthy, delicious meal, and you are ungrateful, unappreciative, and don't even realize how good you have it because your mom is a great cook. And you haven't even tried it yet. You don't even know if it's yucky. But notice how this story is all about me. It's what I've done, how victimized I am, how all-important my experiences of the interaction are. And inherently, when I make myself the center of the story, I'm the hero and my daughter is the villain. It is easy then to vilify her and make negative assumptions about her character and motives. And you might be like, yeah, Megan, she is ungrateful. That's true. I think your story's bang on. And I feel that way too. But there is a different story I can tell, where I shift myself and my experience out of the center. When my daughter says yuck to the dinner that I give her in the evening, I can say to myself, you know what? It's hard to be a kid and to not have any control over the food that you are given to eat. She has never seen this before and has limited exposure to all of the different foods and ingredients that I've gotten to try and experience over my 30 years on Earth, and she's only been alive for 5. I might also feel repulsed by a concoction that I've never seen before. Additionally, she needs naps, and she didn't get one today. And I know when I am tired, my emotions are right on the surface, and I don't often say kind things. Also, again, she's 5. I'm the grown-up in the situation. Why am I expecting her to manage my emotions and my feelings? Now, this doesn't invalidate my own feelings of rage and feeling unappreciated, but when my perception of the hurt dislocates me from center stage, it allows room for the perception of another person's experience, and my feelings often get tempered. I introduce compassion as well as one of my sensations alongside the rage. This is why God asking why is so important. It is critical that we explore our perception of the offense, that we check the story we are telling ourselves, and question, how much am I taking center stage in this story? Because here the balance teeters between forgiveness and unforgiveness. God warns Cain. He says, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door, and it desires to have you." There is a choice here in the descent where we can choose what is right and get off this path of unforgiveness. But if we do not do what is right, if we continue down this road to the next step, sin is crouching at our door. So thus far, there is a hurt. I tell myself a story. I feel angry. And then next, I start to rehearse the hurt. Step 4 is the killer. It's rumination. That story that I didn't realize that I was telling myself in step 2, I now take it and I chew on it. I indulge my negative thoughts and feelings. I rehearse the story over and over in my head, continually adjusting it so that I feel more like the righteous victim and the other is demonized, vilified, and depersonalized. I make myself feel better by declaring how unjust or how unrighteous the situation was. I cement myself at the center of the story and I nurse that wound. And this is the part of the descent of unforgiveness where you just can't get it out of your head. When you wake up in the middle of the night and it's just cycling through over and over and over, this is rumination. You dream about it. You have imaginary conversations in your head. The rumination starts to ferment and it creates this sticky, icky mess that's really hard to untangle yourself from. God is aware that what we do with the story we're telling ourselves has huge impacts on our heart, and the devil knows it too. Sin is crouching at your door, and it desires to have you. The more we ruminate and rehearse the hurt, the more evil spiritual hold we give in our hearts. Unforgiveness is the domain of the devil. What better way to ruin God's design for love between God and others than unforgiveness? This unwillingness to extend self-sacrificing love for the other. Unforgiveness spawns all sorts of things the devil delights in: hate, self-righteousness, pride, disunity, selfishness, loneliness, isolationism, more hurt. God says, if you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door and it desires to have you. And I'm not going to lie, there is a huge allure in the rumination. Because the rumination is where I get to massage my hurt feelings and wounded pride and stoke up my ego. It's where I get to hurt the person back who hurt me, even if it's imaginary and just in my head. Because I win all the imaginary conversations. It's where I get to wallow in woe is me and no one cares about me without having to actually do the hard work of engaging in real relationships. It's where I can feel misjudged, justified, simultaneously the best and the worst, and have this twisted pleasure in wallowing and ruminating. It's like scratching a mosquito bite. You know you're not supposed to do it, but it feels kind of good. I get to be the center. And even if it's for bad reasons because I'm hurting, it still feels good to be the center of the story. But this is what we have to fight against. This is what is not right. When we ruminate, we play right into sin's clutches, and we create something that is even harder to undo. Because the more we ruminate, the more we rehearse the hurt and make ourselves the martyred victim, the more we travel further down the descent of unforgiveness until we reach step 5, which is distillation. I grow bitter. The initial story we told about that hurt creates initial feelings. We have anger, we have fear, we have sadness. But as we ruminate and chew on the story, we experience those emotions over and over and over again until they start to distill into this negative blend of emotions. Resentment, bitterness, hatred, hostility, fear, stress. These emotions get so wrapped up that it becomes really difficult to examine them logically or to disentangle ourselves from them. In rumination, we just rub and rub and rub at what hurts until eventually our hearts are hard and calloused and the actual physical makeup of our bodies changes. So if you've been here before in some of our series where we've talked about our bodies and the connection between our bodies and our spirituality, you know that we are our bodies. Like, we can't separate out our emotions separate from the physical makeup of our bodies. And psychologists like Bessel van der Kolk in his book, The Body Keeps a Score, if you're interested in like the scientific aspect of it, I highly recommend that book. It's really, really good on this. But our experience and our emotions, they don't just live in our mental space. As we feel things, our body releases chemicals and actually change what our body is doing and how it reacts. As we rehearse our hurt and we distill it into bitterness, our bodies actually carry that bitterness. It's like in an embodied way that is no longer logical. So, as an example of this, a couple years ago, someone hurt me really badly, someone that I had cared for and invested in. I spent hours praying for them and counseling them, doing my best to love them well, and they threw it back in my face. They told me how terrible I was, how terrible my husband was, how terrible our church was, and they walked out. And it hurt so bad. And I spent hours ruminating about it, not being able to sleep, wondering if I should have done this differently or that differently, imagining different conversations, feeling sorry for myself, and unjustly treated. And I grew bitter. I was wrapped up in unforgiveness, so much so that my body internalized that unforgiveness. Because the other day, someone just mentioned this person's name to me in conversation, and immediately I had a visceral reaction. My whole body tensed up. My heart started to beat fast. My palms started to sweat. I went into fight or flight mode. I was like, oh no, what are they going to say? How is this going to hurt me again like it did? My body reacted to this long ago hurt as if it was happening again right then. And that was just because someone said their name. When we ruminate on our hurts and we distill it into bitterness, it gets lodged into our bodies in this mass of bodily sensations and reactions that aren't even logical. Have you ever felt anxious just seeing someone who hurt you across the room? Have you ever avoided going to a social event because you knew that person would be there? Have you ever felt your heart beat fast just imagining that person walking through the door? This is unforgiveness living in your bones and my bones, and it all starts with this choice of, will I ruminate or will I not? God warns Cain about the choice between what is right and what is not right in response to his hurt. And God asks him a question, but we don't get to see Cain's response to God's question. But we do see what happens next. In Genesis 4:8, one day Cain suggested to his brother, "Let's go out into the fields." And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. It says one day. So time has passed here between the hurt and what Cain then decides to do with it. We don't get to see Cain's hours of rumination, his rehearsing the hurt, how he paints the story with himself as the victim and his brother as the enemy. We don't get to see his bitterness and hatred solidify and harden his heart, but we see the end of this path of destruction. One day he suggests to his brother, "Let's go away, just the two of us, out to a deserted place, and there I will kill you." Now, we will probably not actively take someone's life at the end of our descent to unforgiveness like Cain, but our hearts might kill someone anyway. Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, "You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'You shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment.' But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment." Jesus equates our heart condition, our unforgiveness, with our actions, saying it's not enough to simply not kill someone with our actions. Our hearts can kill people with our anger, with our unforgiveness, and it is not right. How are we like Cain in our unforgiveness of others? How do we harden our hearts towards people who have hurt us and murder them in thought, if not deed? Do we ice them out? Do we ghost them? Do we simply finish the relationship and treat them like they've never existed? Do we stop extending love to them? Do we wish ill on them? Do we rejoice when they fail or aren't doing well? Do we harbor secret glee in their misfortunes, like serves them right, that's what they deserve? I do this. I have followed the path of Cain and let sin have me. I have ruinously ruminated and let bitterness grow in my heart, and I have murdered people with my anger and my unforgiveness. But it doesn't have to be this way. God tells Cain, "But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." Sin desires to have us, and it crouches at the door of our hurts and broken relationships, but it does not have the final say. God says that we can rule over it. We can master our narratives. We must subdue the sin that lurks at our door. Because what does sin desire? It desires your relationships. It desires your attention. It desires your mental space, your gratitude, your joy, your hope, your connectedness, your family, your church, your friends, your children, your future, your past. It desires anything good in your life, and it wants to suck the joy and life out of it, because you are made for deep relationship with God and others, and nothing brings the devil greater joy than to ruin that in your life. Unforgiveness will ruin the best parts of your life, your relationship with God and other people who are holy and made in his image. Do not let unforgiveness ruin your life. We all have a choice with hurt between what is right and what is not right, and we must rule over the desires of sin and choose the path of forgiveness. You might be like, God, I know I need to do that, but it is so hard. And I understand. Hurts are deep, and it is not easy to forgive. But you are not alone. This is why we are doing a whole year on forgiveness, because it is so crucial, but it is also so difficult. It is easy to ruminate. It is easy to grow bitter. It is not easy to tell a story where I am not at the center anymore and to let God do that restorative work in my heart. So we're going to take time to do that together. God says that there is another way. It is a better way. And with his help, we can be forgiving people. All right, so we're going to review the descent of unforgiveness so that we can start to recognize when we are doing this in our lives. So first, transgression. There's hurt. Second, this is the one we often miss, perception. I tell a story. 3, we have a sensation. I feel betrayed, angry, afraid, offended, unloved. 4, rumination, and this is the killer. I rehearse the hurt. And 5, distillation, I grow bitter and it gets in my bones. Begin to examine some of the hurts in your life and recognize how unforgiveness might be lurking in your heart. I used to think that I was a very easygoing person, that I don't hold grudges, that I forgive people easily. But when I started looking at these different steps of unforgiveness, especially noticing what I ruminated on or who my body had a visceral reaction to, that's where I've started to identify areas of unforgiveness in my life. So ask yourself, what hurts do I ruminate on? What plays over and over in my head? And secondly, who do I not want to see? Who does my body have a reaction against? And this might start being a window into hidden areas of unforgiveness in your heart. The book of Hebrews warns us, watch out that no poisonous root of bitterness grows up to trouble you, corrupting many. We will be working through these different areas of unforgiveness in future weeks, but in the meantime, see if you can start just catching that bitterness before it starts to grow up. It is really helpful to focus on step 2. The next time there is a hurt and you start feeling all the feels, stop and ask God's question. Why do you feel angry? Why is your face downcast? Examine the story you've told yourself. Are you at the center of it? Have you dislocated your experiences from the center so that you can make room for other people's experiences and motivations? It's not easy, so don't expect yourself to be perfect at it, but you will get better at it the more you practice. So just start to practice that. As you start to do this and look at areas of unforgiveness in your life, maybe you will find out that you are an unforgiving mess, just like me, but that's okay. We don't look at our sin and unforgiveness to shame ourselves, but to give ourselves an opportunity to heal, to experience life God's way. Because there's no way to get rid of unforgiveness unless we actually look at it and root it out. And I'm really excited about this because it does not feel good to be an unforgiving person. I hate ruminating. I hate feeling bitterness entrenched into my body. I hate being kept up at night about the things that people have done to me. I hate being held captive to this. I hate feeling ensnared by sin. And I rejoice that this doesn't have to be my reality. In his ultimate act of forgiveness, instead of murdering the people who hurt him like Cain did, Jesus did the ultimate reversal. He laid down his life for the people who hurt him, for people like you and people like me. Hurting is natural. Unforgiveness is natural, but forgiveness is supernatural. And we have a God who will walk alongside us and do it with us. So don't be afraid in this journey of forgiveness because God is with you. Maybe we can't do it, but he can. Let's let him. Let's pray. God, thank you for your wisdom and your teaching, and I thank you that you are a God who forgives, that you model this incredibly difficult thing to do yourself. You show us that it is a better way, and you show us that it is possible. I ask that, Holy Spirit, you begin to illuminate the darkness in our hearts where we are holding on to unforgiveness, and just to illuminate that. We're not yet ready to start trying to release that and let it go, but we just want to become aware of it, Lord. And so I ask that you gently reveal those areas of unforgiveness to us this next week. Thank you for your kindness and your gentleness in this process, Lord. And please help us to lean on you and lean on others as we start our journey of forgiveness. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you for joining the Damascus Road podcast. Our mission is to follow Jesus together by being with God, loving everyone, transforming people, developing leaders, growing new ministries, and changing the world. You can find out more about us online at DamascusRoadTucson.com.